So I'm Matthew Bernardo. I'm the Chief Development Officer for HousingWorks. And today we're going to talk a little bit about HousingWorks and our journey through social enterprise and really how it affected our culture and really how it shaped the organization. So our mission is simple. It's to fight and to end AIDS and homelessness. And we do this through relentless advocacy, we do this through entrepreneurial services, and we do it through providing life-saving services. So a lot of people know about our stores, and a lot of people might know about our bookstore cafe. There might be some that know about our advocacy. We have a sort of a fierce advocacy that sort of comes out of ACT UP. Many politicians may know about it because we're always out on the streets protesting them. There's a third part of our business that is actually our largest part, and that's our health services. And they're really services that wrap around our client. They're mental health, they're dental, they're primary care, they're adult health care centers. And really the purpose of this is a lot of our clients come to us with multiple problems. HIV/AIDS is actually could be down on the list for many. There's homelessness, there's mental illness, there's substance abuse, and the idea is that our clients come and they need all this sort of love and holding environment in which HousingWorks services provide. HousingWorks is actually the largest AIDS service organization in New York State, and this is probably the least known of our business, but it's one of the most important. So to tell the story about HousingWorks, we have to go back to 1990. That's when the AIDS crisis was really full throttle. People were dying at an alarming rate. There was really no hope in sight for a treatment or a cure. And when you got an AIDS diagnosis in 1990, you had about 6 months to live. So this was the environment in which we were working at, and to tell the story about AIDS, you really have to tell the story about ACT UP. ACT UP was really the first reaction that was very visceral to demanding services and funding and a way forward for the HIV/AIDS crisis. HousingWorks actually started out of ACT UP. It started as a housing committee of ACT UP, and we were particularly interested in people that were actually dying on the streets because they were homeless. So if you were homeless and you had AIDS, you had two things either happen. You either were discriminated against because they weren't giving housing to people with HIV and AIDS, and if you were lucky to get into one of the city shelters or one of the city housing, you basically had rules. So if you had 6 months to live, but you had a rule that you had to be sober for 4 months. So if you think of it, what kind of motivation for someone that was struggling with substance abuse that had AIDS, that they had to get sober for 4 months so they could die in their house for the last 2. So it really was something that HousingWorks set out and was determined to house these people. So on the right, you can actually see this this painting, and this hangs in one of our first housing units, and it really is about the chaotic nature of the shelter system in New York City. And what we were trying to do at HousingWorks was to sort of migrate away from that and really come up with a housing with dignity, housing that was sort of independent, and housing that had the services right there so people could survive and thrive. So we started getting our community together of people we wanted to house, and we started incorporating ourselves, and the idea was that I think it was $500, we raised our first $500 to get the HousingWorks name. And we also had a theory, and our theory was that if you have stable housing, the rest will come. But you can't do anything if you're not housed. So if you think about people that you want to keep them on drug regimens, or you want them to, to be in a substance abuse program, they're not going to do it if they don't have a place to lay their head or get up in the morning. So that's basically been the theory that HousingWorks was really set out to solve and to prove, and we've been proving it with much success for the next 20 years. So back to the 90s. So everyone was coming out of ACT UP. There was this the AIDS, lots of AIDS service organizations came out of ACT UP, and there was a really scramble for funding. So at that time, you had God's Love We Deliver, you had Gay Men's Health Crisis, you had AMFAR, and there was a tremendous amount of competitiveness for the for AIDS funding. And Housing Works wasn't doing so well in the traditional fundraising realm. We actually didn't have the natural circles of people that were, and networks that were really deep pockets that we could really look for. So, so what happened one day, we actually met a really unique angel investor. And she came to us because her husband actually was mandated into community service for some tax problems. And she was committed to doing $1 million fundraiser for us. And she actually came with some credibility because she actually had raised $1 million for a racetrack where she had this thing where she auctioned off horse sperm from a very famous horse, and she raised $1 million. So we were like, okay, go for it. And she came back several months later, and she says, I don't think that that it's the fundraiser for $1 million is going to work, but I have an idea for you that's going to make you much more than that. And Charles, our founder, basically looked and said, okay, what is it? And she says, I want you to open a thrift store for people like me and my friends. Now, Charles thought this was a little counterintuitive. This is a very well-heeled lady from the Upper East Side, and it didn't really sort of make sense to him. But she was committed. She says, I will stake the first thrift store. And she put up $150,000. And Charles, not looking a gift horse in the mouth, said, let's go. So we opened our first thrift store in 1992 on 18th Street. We had a short-term lease because the landlord didn't think it was a very good idea either. We did a break-even analysis that said if in the first 3 months we made $24,000, we would break even. So the first 2 weeks, we actually exceeded our $24,000, and really social enterprise and Housing Works was off and running. So now, in the 90s, we added a couple more thrift stores. In 1996, we actually added a catering company. In 1998, we added the Bookstore Cafe. We continued to add stores. In 2004, we actually added events that were shopping events and related to shopping. And just this last year, we opened our first outlet store called By the Bag. So all of this sort of totals that we are now providing $25 million of funding to Housing Works Services, and this is about 44% of the total revenue for the organization. So, you know, to really look at social enterprise and sort of what it really meant to Housing Works, you kind of look at some pivotal moments in Housing Works histories. So there were some threats that sort of made us realize how important social enterprise was to us. So the first threat was in the form of this man. Mayor Giuliani, in 1997, didn't particularly like our fierce brand of advocacy. He didn't like that we were, you know, protesting him and following him around and demanding more services and funding for people living with HIV and AIDS. And he was very much determined to put Housing Works out of business. At that time, we actually had about 500 units of city housing contracts. So we were housing 500 people living with HIV and AIDS being funded by the city. Mr. Giuliani, he sort of turned his city apparatus on us. He went out and ordered audits and ultimately said we were misappropriating funds and took our contracts away. So this actually almost devastated Housing Works. We were almost out of business. We had other services that we were having a tough time to pay for. And if it weren't for the businesses, we would not have been able to survive. Subsequently, we were able to file a lawsuit against the city and Mayor Giuliani, and we won, and we awarded a $5.9 million settlement with the acknowledgement that the contracts were taken back without cause. So, so we were on our way in rebuilding, and one thing that it really made us double down on, we were always committed to advocacy, but now we were making sure that because of the social enterprises, we could really have an independent voice. We could speak truth to power, and we were not going to turn back. So, so really that was the first point where social enterprise really, kept Housing Works afloat, and it really made us double down on the advocacy. The second threat was in 2008 when we went through the recession. So at that time, a lot of big donors were either taking a donor holiday, or they were pulling back, or not funding charities at all. Many charities were actually struggling. Some had to close their doors. Housing Works actually weathered the storm pretty well. And we had an interesting reaction. We actually opened stores. So in 2009, we opened 3 new stores, and we decided to grow our way out of this. And so because of that, right now we total about 80% of our income is earned income. So it's either from billing Medicaid for health services or from our businesses. And that really makes it really strong and powerful for Housing Works to have that kind of self-sufficiency. It's very much like a submarine. Submarines can go underwater, and they can power themselves for months at a time. And so, sort of like a submarine, Housing Works is able to get through tough times because we have this reserve and immediate cash flow. There were times that we would go right to the register, and it would go right into the services the very same day. So it really is an immediacy that was very valuable to us. The next threat is really going on now. It's that the AIDS crisis is over, that there's awareness that's sort of not there anymore. Media is covering it less and less. And really one of the things that if HIV and AIDS is getting to a manageable place, the underpinnings of what makes HIV and AIDS such a devastating disease is always there, and that's homophobia, that's racism, that's poverty. So there'll be another opportunistic virus that will take its place soon once HIV/AIDS is over, just like there was always these things present in our clients' lives. So one of the things that our businesses has done for us is it's really created awareness. So we were able to tap into celebrity, we were able to tap into a unique group of people that were in design and fashion that were hit hard because of HIV and AIDS, and we were able to sort of keep the message going. And because of our businesses, now there's we can draw attention to issues that our clients care about. One of the things that the social enterprise has really done for the organization is it's sort of been a little bit of a culture clash. So, I want you to meet our senior staff. So our senior staff is obviously not a cowboy and an Indian, but they are chefs. They are retail executives. They are doctors. They are social service social workers. And because of this, there's an incredible exchange of ideas, an exchange of cultures, and undoubtedly you're going to influence each other. So the social services are going to influence the social enterprise and vice versa. 2 examples of how this happened is, one is our services really took the brand of the ideas like we built an upscale thrift. The idea was that we wanted to create sort of a disruptive image of what thrift store shopping was. That all of a sudden you think of it as sort of disorganized and a bunch of things that sort of, that no one else wanted. And we really took it as retailing that this is something that you want to go in and it's an exciting place to shop. Very much so that we carried that brand over into our services. You see up on the right is one of our housing projects in Harlem, and it is filled with Herman Miller and Knoll Furniture. The idea is that you can make deals with those vendors. They're much better quality. They will last longer instead of a replacement of cheap furniture. And our clients will respond so much better to it, and they will find that they will take care of things because you're surrounding them with beautiful things. And why should low income housing look like low income housing? Same thing with our health centers. Many health centers are dark and dim, and they're not lighting, and they're not infused with great customer service. So because we were doing retail business that we had to be so competitive, we actually were able to bring some of those sensibilities into our services. And another way that the opposite, that the social services, how that affected our social enterprise was sort of back to the 90s. You have people were starting to get drugs in themselves, and they were starting to feel like there was the life extended, and they wanted to sort of get back into life. There was a future for people living with HIV and AIDS again, and they wanted employment. At that time, Housing Works would have sort of peer jobs for them. They would be a messenger, or they would clean up afterwards, but they weren't really sustainable, and they were very part-time. So they actually, in the spirit of Housing Works, they actually did a sit-in in our CEO's office, and they demanded employment services. So out of that, our job training program started. It was one of the first job training programs for people living with HIV and AIDS in the country. It was unique in the fact that after a 9-month period where you were getting your GED and on-the-job training, you were actually guaranteed a job in Housing Works. So 15% of our employees are former clients. This has a huge impact on how we view the businesses, how all this works together. The walls came down between clients and staff. Clients were able to sort of mentor and empower themselves, as well as give back to future clients. And staff and managers were able to really look at, this is what we're fighting for, and this is who we're serving, right alongside each other. So that was really a very powerful thing that, from the other side, social services really impact social enterprise. You don't usually run businesses like that, and that's what makes Housing Works unique. So some of our learnings of where we're sort of, how we got into social enterprise, it wasn't something that we sought out. It was something that sort of fell into our lap. It's not necessarily for every organization. People think it's just sort of free, easy money. It really takes a lot to do, and there's a lot of conflicts and waves along the way. One of the first ones is actually the tension between the social services and social enterprises. There's always a tension for resources. Nonprofits are not traditionally funded well. So when you do have resources, and there's always sort of a fight for them. Social services, they need the resources right now to provide services. Social enterprise needs resources to invest so they can get more profit down the line, and to keep it going and to keep innovating. And it's also the idea of, like, this idea of where you earn your money is very different than where you're spending your money. So when you look at how you have to reorient your whole organization about how you recruit, how you brand yourself, it's really about, what kind of culture that you make out of this. So that was really our first learning, is that really tension that you have to make sure that if you're going to social enterprise, you do. The second thing is that social enterprise, you don't make money off of the mission. That's not why people are shopping for us. It might be a little bit why they donate to us, but they certainly shop because we have a good product, our prices are well, we have, they're clean stores, they're entertaining, we always have something new. That's why people are shopping, not because of the mission. This is not like the other areas of the organization, our social justice part with advocacy or our social services. That's really where your brand, you're leading with your mission. So it's a little bit differently, and you really have to understand that you're being competitive in the most competitive city in the world in retail. And if you can survive that, you have to play by those rules, not by the rules that you would like people to shop for you because they like your mission. Another learning is that this could be a negative, is that social enterprise can overshadow your social services. If you Google our Housing Works, you're going to have to get many pages in before you get anything significant on our social services. So this can be a problem for sort of getting the word out about what else you do because you're so popular in social enterprise. We did about 500 million media impressions last year just on our social enterprises. So that was just something that sort of can overwhelm it. And it's not even internal to the AIDS industry that this can be true. We were at an event and our CEO introduced our chief medical officer to the then doctor at St. Vincent's, and he looked a little confused about why would you have a doctor at a thrift store. So he obviously didn't even see that beyond the Housing Works, you had all these different services that made us the large AIDS service provider in New York State. So it's something that you have to balance, and sometimes media awareness doesn't always go the way you want it to. And then perseverance. I think that one of the great stories of Housing Works and social enterprise is our bookstore cafe. So we did open a bookstore cafe in 1998. We did this because we were full of books we had 3 thrift stores, and they were sort of clogging up all of our storage space. So we decided we're going to open a bookstore cafe. And we invested a couple $100,000 in it, and it's a beautiful space. If you haven't been there, it's really one of the gems of New York City. The only problem with it is for the next 6 years, it didn't make money. It actually was losing money, and so here's something that's supposed to bring money to the mission is actually drawing from the mission. So that's a huge problem. But we stayed with it. We knew there was potential in the business, and in 2003 we acquired a software, and we started selling books online. And now we sell more books online than we do in the stores, and we started becoming profitable. And then there was one more piece to the story, is that our space was really beautiful, and we did concerts and cultural events, but we really thought there was a way that we could exploit the space and make money. At the same time, we had our other business, which was our catering company. That was hanging around, it was plodding along, it was doing well, it was profitable, but we decided that if we take our catering and we take our event space, and why don't we market weddings? So we started to market weddings starting in 2009, and we started getting all this response. Now you get a unique wedding that's really still inexpensive for New York City in the heart of Soho. And just this year we booked and produced about 70 weddings. So, that's just another way to just be adaptable. You have to find it. If you're going to be in social enterprise, it's not always easy. There's times that you lose money. There's times that you have to adapt. There's times you have to show patience. So these were sort of what they meant to Housing Works, and this is our journey of Housing Works. In fact, it was a mission that we didn't start out as a mission, but in 2009, we actually added social enterprise to our official mission statement. So now it's relentless advocacy, the provision of life-saving services, and entrepreneurial businesses that sustain our efforts. So this was our journey with social enterprise, and that's it. All right. So is that 20 minutes or half hour? So do you have any questions?
I was wondering, so is there an average cost that you can share with us for like the average wedding, any of the 70 that happened there?
It's about $20,000. So the space is $750 an hour sometimes. So in the end, that's about $5,000, and then about $15,000 for food and staff and rentals.
Okay.
So
Oh,
is it? Okay. Yeah, I mean, for a New York City wedding, it's still very, very, very reasonable. So, yeah. It seats 150. It gets 350 for buffet style. So it's a really interesting thing, especially it's all the other stuff is cleared out, and the books are sort of the wallpaper, which really makes it beautiful. So. We have 13 retail stores including By the Bag, and then we have a bookstore cafe. So that's 14 in all. And we have 4 health centers. Obviously, the health centers are much larger, and they're mostly in Manhattan and Brooklyn. And then we have housing units. We have 151 units of independent housing. So.
I have 2 questions. One, your early anecdote about your first angel investor.
Mm-hmm.
You said she told you she wanted you to start a thrift shop for people like her.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever find out exactly what she meant?
She meant that it was an upscale thrift store. That the idea was that she actually had the model. That the model of the thrift store is that we actually go in and we go into very expensive neighborhoods because we get donations from that neighborhood, and we then sell it to the same people that are in that neighborhood. So. Everything in retail is about the product. So if we start out with a good product and actually have the donations that are high end, you're going to be able to have a lot easier time than selling it. So that's what she meant. She actually was right on.
Okay. You didn't show like those pictures of the upscale thrift store. Those didn't come until later in your presentation. Was the very first thrift store, did it have that same ethos? It was in an upscale neighborhood?
Yeah, it was on 18th Street and 7th Avenue. And then that lasted about 6 months, and then we moved into 17th Street, which is our flagship store, and it's on 17th between 6th and 7th. And the idea was that we had a couple things going for us. One is that we were able to like beautifully merchandise it, so we believed in merchandising products. So our products were always had these elaborate displays and sort of a quirkiness that each of our stores is sort of a mirror to the neighborhood. So our Upper East Side store and Chelsea are going to be merchandised differently. So we had that. And remember at the time there were many people that were dying of HIV and AIDS, and we might not have been getting the currency of their cash, but we were certainly getting their estates and all of the furniture and clothing that they were bequeathing us. So that really was able to sort of seed a very good product base for us, and then it sort of caught fire, and we were able to go. We ended up going online through our auctions and growing from there. Sure.
When you were talking about the store, you said it was unprofitable for the first few years, and
Mm-hmm.
then you took off when you started selling stuff online. So my question is, at that point, from a business point of view, how do you justify the bookstore's continued existence once you find out that, like, at least at that point, the real money is in online sales?
Okay, well, because of the bookstore, we were doing the online sales in the basement, so it was part of the whole rent. The bookstore was producing revenue. It's just that it wasn't necessarily. It was right around break even or losing money. So, and the bookstore brought a lot of extra things into the bookstore, which was like we had authors that would garner a lot of media attention. We had concerts. We have John Mellencamp John Cougar Mellencamp that played there, and Bjork, DJ'd there. So there's a lot of things that we could rationalize that we were getting the awareness out through it. But we were just sort of like not making it as a great business proposition. Certainly, the time and energy we were sinking into it wasn't paying off in the first couple of years. But we believed in it. We believed as part of the social enterprise that there was a way to sort of make money, and we would try a lot of different things. Now we have a cafe that's growing, and we have we have the online that's growing, and we have the events that are growing. So it's sort of like sometimes you have to figure it out, and sometimes just dumping it costs more money there anyway, because you have rents and leases and so forth. Mm-hmm.
In a way, I wouldn't say vindicated, but like supported kind of the social enterprise model, which is like a goal to be in large part self-sustaining financially while maintaining like your like mission and goal. Do you think that message still resonates today, or do you think because of kind of the recovery, NGOs are kind of going back to like donor focus and development focus?
Well, I think there's two things. One is that it's not completely proven to the letter of the theory. But the theory is that that secondhand stores can be a little bit countercyclical with the recession. So as people are sort of looking for options to sort of exercise their shopping muscle, they're sort of looking at other places that are that are better value. So so with it, like for example, 15 people in 2009 for the first time decided to shop. 15% of the people decided to shop secondhand stores for the first time. So people started being introduced to this in some ways, and so we do slightly better than regular mainline retail on that. The second thing, as far as traditional fundraising, we really didn't have a traditional development department until like 2004. And what we learned is very much similar to how we merged the bookstore and the catering to make it work. The businesses are really the front door to our development department. Now we are doing traditional development at a better clip. We're getting individual donors. We started a membership program that actually is in all the stores. So that was the first way that people were actually giving cash instead of just giving product. Our events brings a really well-heeled community into the events, and we start sort of working them and bringing them out to lunches, and we're starting to get some multiple figure donations in terms of estates. Last year we were able to get an anonymous donation for $750,000. That was the first time we've ever had something that large. So really the businesses were our front door to development, so we're taking advantage of it wherever they're coming in from. So we're getting much more sophisticated about our development now. So. Okay.
You had a graph that shows that people without housing were more likely to have HIV back in the 90s. Why do you think that was?
Well, it was that you were dying faster, and that the circumstances of being really vulnerable allowed you to have entree into this opportunistic disease. So again, it goes back to sort of, if you are not housed, then you are living a chaotic life. When you're living a chaotic life, you're more likely to get into situations that you're finding, opportunistic disease. The story of HIV and AIDS cannot be told without poverty. Cannot be told without racism, and it cannot be told without homophobia. If you look at where it sort of spread from, it started in the gay and lesbian, the gay community, and now it's mostly in the people of color, and that's where it's sort of transferred to. So you start seeing a lot of these underpinnings with the disease. We always had auctions. We did it as paper auctions. So there was a time where we would always do these windows, and people would go in and they would write down the auction, and there was a time that it would end, and everyone would crowd around for the winning bid, and literally people were like at the register, putting their last bid, and then that's how it was. So we then decided, well, that's really only good for individual stores, and we're only drawing from that community. So we decided to put them online, and we did online auctions. And now we have shophousingworks.com, which does about $1.5 million a year through our auctions, and it opened up the base. Now we have people all over the country that actually buy from it, and we ship to most places. We have people in other countries that are buying from us, and it was also, the auctions were a great way to sort of be a check on that we're getting the right price, because it really is an open market. So we had an example of once we had this piece of art that we were going to price it. We priced it at $25. We threw it in the auction. We figured it'll go where it goes. $17,000 later, we realized that this was a piece of art that was worth it. I'm sure we've had some things slip through our fingers, and that's part of thrifting. That's part of the game. That's part of the hunt, that people want to find these great things. But the online auctions have really helped us put things that we're not sure about on a bigger market that we can get the most for. So.
That's a great way of putting it, like things that you're not quite sure about.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, you walk by and like you get that impression that they kind of be like something that's like a tremendous find, or like,
Yeah.
no, like maybe I could have found it in HousingWorks in a not auctioned area.
Yeah.
I've had a few wins there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. But generally, the rule is anything signed, we try to put in the window, so we can do that. So, great.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.